everyone, and welcome to episode 30 of Bucs UK TV. Thank you for joining us. I've got Phil and Ian as usual, but we have a very special guest for you today. They don't come much more sporty than Alex Goode. He's a professional rugby player with over 300 appearances for Saracens since 2008, which includes 5 Premiership titles, 3 European Champions Cup wins, and 21 caps for England. And the 2019 European Player of the Year award. So, we're in esteemed company, but ignore all of that because the most important thing of all about Alex is that he's a Bucs fan. You can see from the cap. Hello, Alex.
Hi, guys. How you getting on?
Very good. Thanks for joining us from Japan. It's quite late in the evening for you, so we do appreciate your time. Just for those of you that maybe watching who maybe don't watch rugby very much, tell us a little bit about Alex. And actually, it's not just rugby. You're a bit of a sports dynamo, aren't you?
Well, I don't know about that. I don't think I'm qualified to answer that one. But no, I obviously play professional rugby over in Japan at the moment. Hopefully back in the UK by May. But while over here, been following the American football even more than perhaps usual, seeing more and more games. Although very quick to disclaim that I'm not just a one-off, one-season fan of the Bucs. Got the old jerseys which I put on my Instagram of from 18 years ago, and was at the London game last year at Spurs Stadium, London Stadium. What's it called? Spurs Stadium. Yeah. So yeah, no, I've been a big Bucs fan for a long time, which has been tough, as you guys can back me up with. But yeah, I enjoy sport a lot. But the American football, I just amazed by the athleticism of it, but also the detail, the intricacies, and just learning more and more about it. I love the sort of mind game, chess games in rugby and other sports, and the level of which defensive coordinators go against offensive coordinators and their thinking, and sort of just watching a lot of YouTube clips of people breaking it down, and how Gronk scored that first touchdown in terms of they'd done the same play earlier with a run play. And then Sorensen comes up and thinks it's a run play again, and they just slide it across. And just that detail, I love it, and I'm fascinated by it. And I've always been a big Tom Brady fan. I just think what he does is incredible and underrated. And that's sort of my story in terms of Bucs. But I originally got into them because of the likes of Warren Sapp, John Lynch, Rondé Barber. Really, they were the ones that really got me excited by the defense and how loud they were, how vocal, and how excited they got with that, really. And I loved it.
Brilliant. So obviously, you play rugby, you've done athletics, you've done football. I'll probably miss out half a dozen sports that you've done. Have you ever given American football a go or thought about it?
I thought about it, yeah. I've not properly given it a go. We once went to, the only story I've really got about American football, we once, as a trip in Saracens, about 10 years ago now, it's exactly 10 years ago, went to Miami. And we were just there for a sort of camp, just to sort of get warm weather. And it must have been about March time. And there was a lockout at the time. So the players were on strike. And we trained at the Miami facility. And they had this big indoor dome because obviously the heat's too much at times. And I was, I'm a goal kicker, and I always sort of fancied myself to kick American football. And we had a few tries of whacking it over, and I actually kicked quite well. And then next thing pressure comes on. They brought their kicking coaches over. So CEO thought it'd be quite funny to put me on the spot, and I just whacked a few over just without any pressure. And then he said, "Okay, we'll do a snap and then hit it." And something beyond that, reason beyond my control, I just sort of gave it a whack, and it went flying over. And I remember turning to them and going, and they went, "Oh, I'll do it again then." And I did it again, and I was like, "Oh my God." And I'm looking at them going, "Contract? You going to get me in then?" So and they just went, "Oh, nice." And they were walking off. I was like, "No, seriously, guys, like, the 50-yarder. Come on, get back over there." But yeah, I haven't heard anything since. But I've spoken to NFL London a few times, jokingly about just swinging a few kicks maybe. But I haven't properly thought about it now.
I mean, a lot of the discussions between sports fans in terms of rugby and the NFL are these kind of questions about comparing and contrasting the two sports. And I remember when I first saw American football on the TV a long time ago, there was a thought about, well, hang on, they've got these pads, they're wearing helmets. And as you probably know, a lot of detractors to American football call it rugby for girls. I mean, from your perspective as an avid player and also a supporter of both, how would you compare and contrast the two games?
I think I'd probably get quite frustrated, a bit like with lazy sort of I think when people go, oh, he could have been a football player, or he could have played cricket, or he could have done, this guy would make it in NFL. I think people just are naive and lazy in terms of the differences in the games. Even going from rugby league to rugby union is so hard. The intricacies are so different. And I think we found that enough times now with American football. We think we'll send some of our best athletes in rugby over there, and they don't even make it out of the practice squad. And I was very lucky as well. There was a guy on our team who I played with for a number of years called Hayden Smith, and he was actually signed by the Jets. Fully signed. They saw him do a 40-meter time. He went to do workouts at about 8 different franchises. Jets took him on, 2-year deal, and he said the playbook was like 3 yellow pages in terms of what he had to learn. And he's the most studious guy. His work ethic was incredible. And he was just morning, night, going through it. And he actually took a few snaps in the league, which is more than most people get. But even the second year, new coach comes in, he doesn't want a project, and he cut him straight away. But that's the only story I really know which worked out. Christian Wade at the moment, everyone's like, oh, look, he's done the preseason game. Look what he did. And maybe I'm cynical. I go, yeah, but there is thousands of people who can run as fast as Christian Wade and who are bigger, stronger, and who have played the game, who know how to block, who know these different schemes. Christian Wade is a phenomenal runner, but to learn all that, and he's got no benefits physically, I think is makes it very hard. And people just want to go, oh, well, they're great at rugby, they can do it. It's very different. And it's the same with American football players coming to rugby. It's not as easy as that. Learning how to ruck, to maul, to how to tackle properly. It's very different. So I have a huge amount of respect for NFL because I think they're possibly, the greatest athletes in the world, really, on the planet, in terms of their raw athleticism. Yes, they're not the fittest, but in terms of power, speed, just out of this world. And I certainly don't disrespect them for having pads. No, I think it perhaps makes it more dangerous, and their technique could be better. There's many times I think tackle-wise, you see certain franchises have taken something from rugby and wrapping their arms, but at the same time, they're taught to tackle shoulder onto ball or head onto ball. They're trying to dislodge it the whole time. So that's what they're taught, and they're flying at such speed that they're trying to either injure them or knock them back. So I think there's plenty of things you can sort of take small parallels from, but the changeover of players, I think, is extremely difficult and probably quite lazy from media and people.
I think you're absolutely right there. You mentioned, Alex, about obviously being an NFL fan and a Bucs fan for quite a while. I mean, tell us a little bit about how you got into the NFL in the first place, and how you were so lucky to choose the Buccaneers as your team.
It's a really good question. I probably can't really give you an answer. I think I just started watching the NFL on Sky maybe or something when we first got it, and saw a few games. And I think my uncle at the time lived in America. He was a 49ers fan or something like that, and he enjoyed it, and then moved to Chicago, but still a 49ers fan. And I just got a bit of a liking through that, and then got sort of dragged into the Bucs a bit as the pirate ship and the cannons, and the way they went on about the defense I mentioned before. And I took a real liking to Rondé Barber. I just remember thinking, reading all and hearing about the stuff of how he was like defying the odds by being so small, but yet was so good, and read the game so well, and just enjoyed it really, and got myself a Bucs top and just stuck with them ever since, really. I mean, don't get me wrong, I wasn't diehard enough to sort of, only support them. I did enjoy other franchises, and I'm certainly not someone who dislikes New England. I think what they've done is incredible to do that. And, this is perhaps me as a Saracens person to have the longevity of success year on, year out is extremely hard. And for them to do that in a, with the draft system is phenomenal, really. And I take my hat off to them. But I don't hate them like a lot of America, that's for sure.
Actually, that leads quite nicely into my next question, Alex. I mean, interested to know, who some of your favourite players have been, past and present. I mean, in terms of the Bucs, I think for the game in London, you wore your Rondé Barber shirt, and you've mentioned Rondé Barber already. So interested to know about some of your favourite Bucs players, but also, looking wider, which other players across the league, again, past and present, have you respected and been a particular favourite?
That's a good question. I think Rondé Barber particularly, we've got a lot of time for him. I'd say as well, I think over the years now, Aaron Donald has come in recently, and I find what he does as someone, again, like coming out of college, I think he was a bit too small for a pass rusher or friends end. Like, everyone's a bit like, oh, he's not quite big enough, and yet how explosive he is, his technique, and just phenomenal. Really, I think he's someone who is unbelievable. Julio Jones, more recently, I think not quite got the players around him, but just so gifted, so unbelievably good as a player. And then really of that New England team, Tom Brady, I think it's a very boring, obvious one. And I probably refuse to get a Brady shirt for the Bucs because I feel like I'm just jumping on the bandwagon. But he's just so impressive what he does. And so I just can't help but just admire his ability to lead teams and the intangibles, as they always say in American football. Everyone shows him and his bad 40-meter time in the combine, but there's so many intangibles that he brings. And he's won 7 titles. And I think this year he will never say this is his best, but to go to the Buccaneers, no preseason, develop a relationship, change the offensive bit, work with Bruce Arians, and then still come away and win is incredible in its own right. And I guess, the question I've asked myself to take it a bit further is, what name would I get on the back of my shirt for the Buccaneers shirt from this Super Bowl? And I still haven't really decided. I haven't really got an answer to myself. And most of the time I think, Evans, I wouldn't go Gronk. I want to get someone who's like Rondé Barber was there the whole time. And I'm like, the Devin Whites, the Levante Davids, JPP. I don't know, Shaq Rat. I honestly can't make my mind up at this stage. And maybe at the end of this conversation, we'll get to an answer, perhaps.
You're gonna have to get them all then.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, bear in mind none of them actually ever fit. I'd probably have to go only one, really. But
it's nice to have that choice of so many great players at the moment, isn't it? So the very last question from me is another compare and contrast sort of questions. So you probably saw in Tampa they had a boat parade to celebrate the victory, and poor Tom Brady had to be helped home after a couple of hours as he had so much to drink. There was a story There was a story about you, Alex, following the Champions Cup final win over Leinster. So how would you have celebrated had you have won the Super Bowl?
Well, it's safe to say my phone on Twitter actually got quite a lot of notifications of people seeing the Tom Brady one, going, oh, he's he needs to go and hang out with Alex Goode a bit more, and he should have his full kit on. I'm like, oh, okay, well, one's one of the greatest ever sportsmen ever in the history of any game, and one's me. So, I think it's probably not a fair comparison, but I tell you, it is amazing to see Tom Brady do that, because you just never get a glimpse of it. Him having a few drinks in public and everything. And, people are saying, oh, he's having this avocado tequila or whatever it is, it's a joke. But he just looked like he was happy with his family, and any man who can roll up on a £2 million boat, his own boat, to a boat parade is doing all right for himself. But I think, to answer, I actually commented on someone else put a comment about how good does this look, and I said, yeah, it's a different level to our celebrations in a dusty old pub that we'd probably be in. But it looked unbelievable, if I'm honest. You know, going on the boats, the weather looked great. They were all so happy. And I think, to go off tangent, I think that was just unbelievable. I think something about Tom Brady as well, which I have to harp on about, is you never hear a player ever say a bad word about him. Never. Like his own teammates. And I know, why would they? You know, he's so successful and he's so good, but never. You know, and no wide receiver goes, oh, he doesn't pass from the ball. No, you know, offensive lineman goes, oh, well, he's impossible to protect. You know, it's none of that. He is so good for the organization. He's amazing. He's so dedicated. He does this. He gets us over the line. And I think that's just incredible. He goes to this new team, and you'd think the players might be getting a bit annoyed about talking about Tom Brady when they've won, but they're like, he's the greatest. We wouldn't have won without him. You know, he led us to victory, even though he wasn't perhaps in his passing, the way he was around the training center, the belief he gave us, and that's just incredible from my eyes.
Yeah, and I think 2 days after the boat parade that we talked about, 5 a.m. in the morning, he was up and he was on the practice field again. I mean, it just extraordinary dedication as well.
He could have been still hungover at that point, but I'll let him slide. He wins us another trophy, I don't mind.
So I'll just hand over now to Phil, who I think's got a rugby question to begin with.
Yeah. Hi, Alex. Just want to say I've been on a stag night with a few rugby players, and keep it to yourself, my friend. Keep it to yourself. One thing that's always fascinates me is the game of rugby in the US. I always think that the US national team exceeds expectations at the World Cup. And I've always thought that although you touched on earlier about how the two games are so different, was what do you think about the game of rugby in the US? Because I've always thought there's got a great pool of players that can actually go and play the game after they finished college football.
I firmly agree. I think there's a lot of people who have thought for many years that if the US tapped into the pool of talent they have, they could be very, very successful. I think a big stumbling block for them was the Rio Olympics, which would have been 2016, I think it was. The US had a very, very good sevens team, like really good, one of the best in the world. And they flopped ultimately. They didn't, I think they came like 8th or 9th. It was like really bad, and it wasn't expected. And that was sort of just, the momentum was really growing. It was on the global stage, world stage. The US public would have really seen it. And if they'd done well there, I think it would have brought a lot of momentum to the game. As it was, they faltered, and they haven't really gained momentum since. And I think the sevens game is where it starts. There's people like Perry Baker and Colin Arlt who were sprinters or played a bit of American football and didn't quite make it. And they came into the game and they started to get some publicity and doing well. And I think they can get more and more players from that who don't quite make it in college football or etc. And I think that was a problem for them. I think ultimately that the issue is they don't have a professional league. It's coming back this year, but it's been very sporadic, a bit all over the place. And until you have that, it's quite hard, really. But the person who really was quite incredible for that was what's his second name? He played for New England Patriots. I think he still does. Nate something. He's in the special teams. He played for US
Webster?
in the sevens. Nate, huh?
Nate Webster, was it? I can't remember.
Is he Solder? Nate Solder, is it?
No, I think he's a special teams player. And he
Nate Solder, yes.
He's Nate Solder, is it? Okay.
Yeah. No, he's an offensive tackle.
No. So this
Nate
is
Ebner.
That's it.
Yeah.
Ebner. Yeah. So he played for US in the Olympics and played rugby at college, and then went back to the Patriots, and the Patriots allowed him to do it. And it's people like that. If you see like that is possible and they are good, but they have to have played at college, I think. Otherwise, the nuances are too difficult. but there's a huge amount of talent to them to tap into.
Because they're starting to play it at college level as well now. I know a friend of ours has started to play in Florida State University up there, and it's more and more colleges now are actually introducing rugby into their sort of sports curriculum. So I think I've often thought, watch this space, because one day I always think we'll kick in.
I think it has the potential to. It really does. I think they're fighting a big battle with soccer. If you think about the major sports in America, from NFL, the ice hockey, the basketball, and the baseball, they're the sort of 4 big sports. And then soccer's been fighting for a long time now. And then rugby's trying to get there as well. It'll be interesting. There's a few more European players, global players going over for the league this year. Whether that gets any traction, we'll have to see. But it is growing in college, yes.
Well, like you, Alex, I'm also a very, very big Tom Brady fan, and have been ever since he played in Michigan, actually. By complete freak, I saw him play his game against North Carolina State, and I've always followed his career. So really, my question to you is, what were your takeaways from the Super Bowl after because we're quite as you are, right? We're all still living in cuckoo land here, So what are your takeaways from the game?
I think I was very worried going into it that having seen the game before, I thought Kansas City could deal with the blitz quite well. And I thought their ability to deal with the blitz was something they were very well matched against Tampa. But I also thought that Tom Brady really had to score points as well. I knew they had problems with the guard and everything. I just didn't think I think they were naive if, limited experience, fine. I just felt that they kept trying to play the 4 wide receivers the whole time, and they were clearly getting smashed up front. The 4 defensive, the front of the Bucs were just putting so much pressure on, and yet they didn't put any extra men there, and they just kept trying to do it. They went away from the run completely, and I thought it was a bit naive. They just kept thinking that Mahomes' talent was going to throw it over the top and they'd be all right, and it became easier and easier for the Bucs because they just went further back. They had the Tampa 2 at the back the whole time, but really anywhere deep, they had 3-4 men always, and that was it. And look, they were chasing the game, and the Bucs did an extraordinary job in that sense. But I think, look, my take was that front 4 were the real MVPs in a sense. Yes, the linebackers had a huge role. I thought it was pretty easy for the secondary. They did a good job, but it wasn't that hard. The linebackers were fantastic at just moving around, their speed, and Vontae David and Devin White just moving around there and stopping any screens or any crossovers. They were fantastic in that role. Defense, though, to stop them scoring a touchdown was huge. And it then allowed Brady, with the run game, just to smash it up, find the small passes. And look, someone like Tom Brady, he will find your weakness. And he did that, and everyone talks about all the wide receivers, but he just went where they weren't marking. It hadn't thrown to Gronk pretty much perhaps once in the postseason, and yet he was the main target because they left him alone. There, Mike Evans, I think, got 1 catch, but they were double teaming him, and Brady just goes, fine, I'll go there. Okay, Leonard Fournette down the middle, I'll throw it to him. Out there, Antonio Brown for a touchdown, 2 yards. He'll just beat you. And I think my take to finalize on that is, I've seen a lot of interviews from Ray Lewis talking about Brady, and he says he's the simplest American football player in the world. He just, if you're there, he goes there. If you have this coverage, he knows to go there. He doesn't overcomplicate things. He just does the right thing every single time because he knows the game of chess and he knows all the coverages, and he goes, I'm going to go there if you do this. And he says that's where he's so good because he keeps it so simple. And I think that's what he did. But generally, I think the defense of the Bucs was the outstanding part.
Yeah, I think one of my favourite stats from the Super Bowl was when I saw that Mahomes had 497 yards running away from the pass rush. The front 4, yeah. So I'm a big fan of Tom Brady. Can we do it again? Can we go back to back?
I think there's been perhaps a bit too much overhype since it happened, purely because everyone's like, Tampa Bay are the favourites. Tampa Bay are the favourites. And my take on the psychology of that is there's only been one team that have done it back to back in the last 20 years, pretty much. It's so hard to do because, and I speak from my experience as a sportsman, is I remember winning the Premiership for the first time, and we didn't get back there for 3 years later because you win it that first time. You're so hungry, you're so desperate. You do all those little bits here, there. Everything's built towards doing that, and then you get it, and it's great. But there's just small things that then distract you after that. You're the favourites, and everyone's coming at you. You know, things don't quite work out as well. People want more money. You know, people have nicer cars in a simple sense. You know, people are a bit like, oh no, I can do what I want. I'm a Super Bowl winner. Oh no, I've done this before. I think you have to have such a good culture in place. And I'm not saying they don't have that. I just think there's a reason why teams don't go back to back. And we'll see in the next, I don't know, 4 months or whatever it is, what happens in free agency, because that is the biggest single factor. And then on top of that, it would just be really interesting to see culturally how they're affected by the win. Because you know, they get to the final but Super Bowl and they lose, I guarantee they'll be the winners next year. Probably they get to the Super Bowl and win, and they're so dominant. Can they keep that going? Now that is the hardest thing in sport. Everyone wants to get to the top, and then you get to the top, and you're a bit like, "God, what's next?" And it's easy to say winning a Super Bowl, but to actually do that is hard.
I know we've spoken obviously a lot about Tom Brady, but in terms of culture and someone who's won 7 Super Bowls, I guess we're in the best possible position, aren't we, in terms of having Brady as a quarterback, but also the coaches as well, Arians and Bowles. I think, you know, they create the culture as well, don't they? So, but as you say, it is very, very hard to maintain that level.
Yeah, I also think, like you say, free agency is very, very important. You know, are we going to keep Antonio Brown? Are we going to keep Fournette? Who's going to come to the Buccaneers that also could be hungry for a ring? Because there's one thing about it. Yes, there's only one team that's done back to back, but the quarterback was Tom Brady. So
a question to you guys though is, of the free agents, who, if you could keep, so you can't keep 2, keep the rest, who do you keep and who do you get rid of?
It's hard, isn't it? I think we'd all love to keep Chris Godwin, but I don't think the money's going to work out unless we franchise him.
I read today though they're talking about franchising him. I personally don't think that's a necessity. I think Shaq Barrett's on he's free agent. So I think someone like him, he is someone you need to keep hold. We need to keep hold of. I think someone like Chris Godwin, yes, it would be great, but if Antonio Brown's definitely coming back, I think it's less of a necessity. And for that money, I think you just keep your squad going healthy. Because he's a top receiver, we know that, but you still have Evans, Brown, Gronk, Scotty Miller, Bray. You've got OJ Howard. Maybe one of those 3 you don't keep. But look, I think Gronk's dirt cheap at the moment for what he offers. So in Bray and OJ Howard, perhaps one of those 2 goes. But I don't think Godwin's as a necessity as much as I think Antonio Brown. Again, I think you could see him putting up huge numbers next year. If he stayed and he was more of a him and Evans kind of always playing. Godwin, I think, is great, and he is a Buccaneers man, but I don't think he's such a priority. The other one I think it would be huge to keep, Dominican Sue. I think he's very underrated. Look, he's a reason why he's been to many Super Bowls. Yes, his first ring, but he's a dominant force there. I think it seems, looking from the outside, he's very good for the environment. And I just think he is part of that, you know, some of the best defenses we've seen, and him and Aaron Donald I talked about before were unbelievable together. This pass rush here, the job he does with Vita Vea in the middle allows the others to just rush off the edge so effectively.
I also think that I tend to agree with you on Godwin as well, because I think Tyler Johnson in his first year really has shown all the signs. A bit raw, but he has that catch against New Orleans was just wow, one of the best catches I saw of the season, and I just think he's got a talent waiting to come. Yeah.
And they say that Brady really enjoys work with him, has a lot of, you know, really thinks he's very good, which is the biggest thing if the quarterback relationship. So
I do think we've got to keep Gronk there, because Gronk's not only a tight end, he's another offensive line player. I mean, we had problems on the offensive line. Gronk goes on the offensive line, we suddenly start to win again. And I'm a great fan of him, you know.
And I agree. I think you only have to look. People talk about so much about Kelsey and as what's Gronk so good at? He is the best blocking tight end there's ever been, probably. He's such a huge force. He's so technically good. And if you break it down, Tom Brady, everyone knows, is the best play action. Once he gets the running game go, his play action, deciding where to pick people off. So you need an effective running game. Now, I personally think that running backs are a dime a dozen in a sense, and that's probably quite harsh. But if you've got Ronald Jones, you could get another Leonard Fournette from somewhere else. But who can run through the gaps, but you need blockers. And if you've got Gronk and a decent offensive line, then you've got a massive chance, I think. So I think he would be a priority for me because he's also relatively cheap. He doesn't have to do every snap, which keeps him healthy. And I think that's a win-win.
Yes, I think we've had these discussions on some of the other podcasts, and kind of very much in the same position regarding Godwin not necessarily being a priority and Dominican Sue being really important that he gets back. I guess where I've got a slightly different perspective, I'd be keen to get Leonard Fournette back. Particularly when it came to the playoffs. He just moved up a gear, didn't he? He was, I think it might have been the last regular season game. He was a healthy scratch. Arian said to him, look, it's up to you. You either kind of join the team and move up a level. The choice is yours. And he absolutely stepped up, I think, in the playoffs and in the Super Bowl as well. A couple of really important touchdowns he got in the Packers game and obviously in the Super Bowl as well. So I suppose that's the one Fournette that I would be keen to that we kept.
So the first thing we have to do is we have to thank Bucs Report for their help in supporting our podcast. And Alex, you may not know this, but we've been going since 1984, and as well as being just a YouTube channel, we are a membership club. So everyone out there, if you haven't already joined, head over to bucsuk.org, click on the join button, and make sure you sign up. For your members, if you're reading this, make sure you filled in your end of season survey feedback form and voted for your Bucs UK awards. The awards will be our next podcast. And also, Alex, as we are a membership organisation, we couldn't let such an ardent Bucs fan as you get away. So we would be delighted to make you an honorary member of the Bucs UK. And we've got some little goodies we can send you. You can get your Bucs UK hoodie, and we've got some patches we can let you have. And if you want to be a little bit more low key, we've even got a little look at that way.
Nice.
There we go, a little pin we can let you have. There we go. So not now on the air, but afterwards, drop us your address. We'll get all of that posted out to you with your membership card, and you're one of us.
Oh, thank you very much. I really, really appreciate that. I'm looking forward to it. Hopefully I'll get even more feedback on what's going on behind the scenes with the Bucs Nation. So, yeah, looking forward to it.
Fantastic. So now you're one of us. Your fellow members had a few questions for you.
Okay.
So the first question we had was from Gareth. Gareth said, if you could bring back or change one rule in rugby, what would it be and why?
Oh, if you could bring back or change one rule in rugby, I don't know why we're asking rugby questions, silly sport. Probably the choke rule, where if you hold people up in the tackle, then you get the scrum. I think it's kind of ruins rugby a bit, and I'd rather it was just if you were going forward, you keep the ball. If you're not going forward, then you turn the ball over. So the choke tackle rule, I think, is not a great rule in rugby.
Are there any rules in American football that kind of make you scratch your head a little bit?
Yeah, ineligible receivers. I don't know how that can get to that point and how it happens and how you make. Because surely, because what usually happens is they have to tell people if they're eligible. for a receiver, they have to go to the ref or something. I don't really understand it.
Yeah, that's
but it
it.
always seems to be they throw it to someone and they go, he was eligible, and I'm going.
And an ineligible receiver downfield is another confusing one where the lineman just has no one to block, so they go wandering and get in trouble. That doesn't seem to make any sense, does it?
No, yeah. I mean, yeah, and I can kind of get that one. You don't want too many big men up the field; it's dangerous. It's like charging rhinos. But yeah, the receiver one is a bit confusing for me because why else are they there if they're not to receive the ball? But anyway.
Cool. And Steve Gargett says, "Who's the best coach you've played for and why?" And if you don't want favourites, you can have more than one. We don't want to get you in trouble.
Well, Mark McCall and Brendan Venter. Brendan Venter sort of started the revolution at Saracens when I was younger and really changed the whole culture, the whole organisation, like I've never ever seen or witnessed anything like it, and was incredible. And then Mark McCall really was, a huge influence on us getting all the silverware we've got and taking our game to the next level, really, with his tactical knowledge and leadership. So those two coaches for Saracens are the best two, are phenomenal.
Okay, and then Dom says, both yourself at Ipswich and your teammate Jonathan Joseph at Derby were academy football players before moving on to rugby. Which one of them was the better football player?
AKA the Charmer, he's calling himself, isn't
That's right, yeah. That's his forum username.
Well, I know Jonathan Jones is a very good tennis player. I'd probably let's say he beat me at tennis, but when it comes to football, I've seen him kick a ball, and I don't believe he played for Derby County. You can get a sense of someone when they kick a rugby ball, and I'm just not buying it. He wouldn't be in my top 5 players I've played football with in England camp. So I back myself on that one, yeah.
I think Dom's a Derby fan, so sorry to you, Dom, but the truth hurts sometimes.
Well, Dom, I hate to break it to you, but you're obviously letting in some rubbish players into your academy. But I tell you, Ipswich, we were pretty mean when I was younger. Beat a lot of clubs, so I back myself on that one. But Danny Kerr is a very good football player. I'll give him that. That's for sure. Brilliant.
And Phil says, what position would he play in the NFL? So obviously you're a fullback in real life, but you probably wouldn't be a fullback, would you?
Yeah, I mean, a punt return in that sense, but no. I tell you why, because of everything I said before. So I'm not stupid enough to think that I could be a quarterback or a punt return or a tight end or anything like that, because physically not in the shape that these guys are. So I'll be pretty simple and say I would be the kicker, and I reckon I'd be all right. Just all right, not great, not the longest leg in the world, but pretty good from 45, 40.
What about punting? Because I've seen some of your highlights, and you can certainly get some air and hang time on the ball.
Yeah. I think my thing would be if I was a punter is that I would just get really excited if I got the chance to make a tackle. I'd probably get run around a few times. By the time I got there, I'd be 38 or so. But the thought of just the punter just leveling a player, I think, just excites me. And suddenly your teammates go from "who the hell is our punter? No one cares" to "we love this guy." And I'm like, that would be my dream to be, because I've seen a few clips from an Aussie AFL player played out there and did that and wiped someone out. And I remember thinking, he's the man now. Everyone knows who he is now. So
going back to the kicking and us talking about free agency, of course, Ryan Suckup is a free agent. So, Alex, this could be your chance.
Yeah. I mean, maybe you can get word to Tom Brady and we'll just say, look, TB12 says I've got the minerals for it and I'm the man. So, that's what happens.
Brilliant. And I think it's our last question from Pete. What was his experience at the London NFL game like?
The one at Spurs?
Yes. I think let's divide it between the on the field and off the field, shall we?
Yeah. I mean, I've been to a lot of the games in London. I found the one at Spurs Stadium unbelievable because I was quite lucky enough to go down pitch side, actually. So I loved it in that sense. But I was obviously horrified by James Winston's performance and throwing, I think, 6 interceptions or turnovers on the day. So that hit me pretty hard, really, coming in hot with my full Buccaneers outfit. But as a stadium and in terms of how it's built for American football, it was unbelievably good. I have to say, I take my hat off to it. And the crowd were in good form and nice and vocal. So, really good. Just not the performance I would have loved.
Fair enough. Okay, so that's everything from our members. Thank you ever so much for joining us, Alex.
Just want to say thanks, Alex. Thanks for joining us from Japan. It's a real honour to have you on, and keep in touch. Keep in touch.
No, thank you guys. I really enjoyed it, and it's obviously great to come on after a success and a victory. It's the best way to come on to the show. So all in good spirits. But no, thanks so much for having me on there and for letting me become a member. I really appreciate it.
So Alex is on social media, and down in the video description, you'll find the links if you want to follow Alex and find out what's going on. Obviously, we want you to like and subscribe and click the bell on this video. Make sure you get over to bucsuk.org and click on join, and we will see you next time for the 33rd annual Bucs UK Awards. So it's goodbye from them.
Bye.
Bye.
Cheers, guys. Thanks a lot.
And goodbye from me. Thank you. See you soon.